And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and the Rabbi Shmuley. The war on ISIS has been hard fought, either from the air or on the ground. If you talk to Iraqi troops, the Pentagon has estimated that roughly 6,000 members of the terrorist army have been killed since the air campaign began last fall. There is still debate, however, over how effective the campaign has been overall. Fox News reporting that according to their military and intelligence sources, ISIS senior leadership remains largely untouched. Meanwhile, President Obama is feeling pressure from Americans who are growing tired of the ISIS threat. According to a recent CNN ORC poll, still don't know what ORC stands for, 57% of Americans disapprove of how the president is handling ISIS. Back in September, less than half, 49%, disapproved. Well, the president is now trying to shift the attention away on the matter, but who to blame? Here's the commander-in-chief on HBO's Vice answering that question. Why did ISIS grow so quickly?
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion, which is an example of unintended consequences, which is why we should generally aim before we shoot.
Well, as the interviewer challenged him, when he said that, but he gave a nice to that, and was very pensive when listening to the president. Anyway, did the president just really blame the growth of ISIS on President Bush? We'll get back to that in a second. The president also continuing the rhetoric of the growth of ISIS is because of unemployed Sunnis who have no opportunities.
The underlying problem of disaffected Sunnis around the world, but particularly in some of these areas, including Libya, including Yemen, where a young man who's growing up, has no education, has no prospects for the future, is looking around, and the one way that he can get validation, power, respect is if he's a fighter. And this looks like the toughest gang around, so let me affiliate with them.
Again, great in that interview. So what's going to compel terrorists to stop killing us? Show me the money.
And we can't keep on thinking about counterterrorism and security as entirely separate from diplomacy, development, education, all these things that are considered soft, but in fact are vital to our national security, and we do not fund those. If you ask the average person, how much do we spend on foreign aid? They'll say 25% of the federal budget. Right. Well, it's a little over 1%. We should be thinking about making investments there that ultimately save us from having to send our young men and women to fight.
So, Mr. Unger, do you agree with the president in terms of President Bush being to blame for the growth of ISIL or ISIS or whatever we're calling it today?
Look, you know, I know it's a lot of fun to, whenever the president refers back to that era of our history, oh, he's blaming Bush again. Look, you can't deny history just because it's politically uncomfortable. The fact of the matter is, nobody disputes that ISIL is grew out of, came from Iraq Al-Qaeda in Iraq. That's a fact. There's no point in arguing it. Now, you can criticize this president for not catching on to it sooner than he did and making a bigger fuss. But nothing he said there is even close to untrue. So that's point number one. Point number two...
Can I stop you before you get point number two?
Okay, sure.
All right, on your point number one.
If you must.
Wasn't the growth, I mean, the true growth, didn't that really come when troops were pulled out of Iraq?
No, actually, I would argue the true growth came in about 2006 when the organization that was now ISIL were able to spring a whole bunch of Sunni commanders that were part of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, who had previously been part of the Saddam regime, military regime. Right. They sprung them out of jail, brought them into their organization, and they are now the people who run the thing.
And then there was a surge that squashed that,
so,
and things are relatively
the surge did not destroy it. The surge definitely thinned the ranks.
Yes.
But it did not destroy Al-Qaeda in, this is, you know, a misnomer.
So it shrank and then it grew when American troops
put those people in jail and they took them out. Now, you know what? We can have that debate forever as to what would have happened if we had kept them. I can't tell you you're wrong. And by the way, you can't tell me you're right because nobody's ever going to know this.
Well, maybe we could let Heather decide.
Well, she can decide all she wants.
I think it's a complete distraction. I think that we're talking about something that's completely unimportant. And in fact, the question that was asked was not how did this all start historically. What the question that was asked in that interview was how did they become so popular?
Wait. Was there a question ever asked in that
There
interview?
was.
I just shook
There
his head.
was. There was. I actually watched the whole interview.
I'm not
Other
sure
than-
popular was the word that they
No,
used.
that is. It absolutely is. I
Popular
watched
with
it.
who?
I watched it more than once because that was. I wanted to make sure that he was actually answering the question asked, since everyone's made such a big fuss about it. And that was the question asked. And rather than referring to the fact that I called them JV, I don't really know how they became so popular either. He went to a history lesson.
Would you agree if
which
we
is a
had never
deterrent.
invaded Iraq, that
I
there
don't
never
think
would have
it
been an
makes a
ISIL?
lick of difference. No, you've got.
You're going back to something that is 12 years old now. We know why ISIS came to power. It's because the Obama administration did not support any of the opposition groups who were fighting for their freedom under the most murderous dictator of our time, Bashar al-Assad. Now, yesterday,
So wait, now it's a Syria question.
yesterday, John Kerry almost disgraced himself by suddenly saying that the United States sees a role for Assad to play in the peace negotiations. Now, wait a second. Wasn't this the guy that you, John Kerry, were trying to create an international coalition to punish for gassing Arab children? Have we forgotten about that? Using poison gas against kids. Does the United States have no values? Does it have no heart? Does it have no decency? This isn't decent. It's astonishing. Now, the breakdown of Syria is directly it resulted from the United States allowing the entire country to disintegrate and doing absolutely nothing. So when the president sits there and says, maybe we should spend more money on foreign policy and get a bit involved, Mr. President, you drew a red line in the sand that you mocked, that you made a farce of by not enforcing it. So let's be honest about this. The United States needs to stand for something. Now, we can debate whether there should have been an invasion of Iraq. But if we have to debate whether we should punish a dictator who gasses children, then we stand
You mean like
precisely
Saddam
for
Hussein?
nothing. Exactly.
Okay.
Saddam Hussein used poison
So
gas
anybody
Last
uses
word.
in
poison
1988.
gas.
Well, poison gas for me as a Jew has a particular nefarious
As it
connotation
does
that
for me.
exactly.
We should go after anybody who uses poison gas
I
in the
think
country.
that if the
Because I'm
president,
about to give you a list
I
of
think
people we
if
didn't
the
go
president of the
after.
United States says this is a red line, I am the most powerful man on earth. Don't do it because you're going to be punished. And then he says, well, you know what? I was kind of not serious.
And if we,
that's a problem.
And if we had done what he said, which was go bomb them or whatever, because of the red line, who would be running Syria today in your estimation?
Well, you know what? Had we supported,
We're going to run out of time.
had we
so.
supported
It would be
groups that are
ISIL.
not ISIL,
It would
no,
be ISIL,
No,
and
no.
we were-
Guys,
ISIS
we gotta
came
go.
to power because we didn't support other groups.
We
We
gotta
were
go.
supporting them.
Can I just have a button that says skip commercial and we just keep going? That would be nice. Anyway, coming up next in the Daily Wrap, should Pete Rose, that's a transition, his ban from baseball be lifted? The MLB commissioner is thinking about it. This is the Daily Wrap only on Newsmax TV.